Hello, everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of the podcast Techquanimity. My name is Cynthia Phelps, and I am the founder of InnerAlly, a technology company that is designing tools to help you with your mental wellness. And it's focused on using mindfulness and compassion science. And I'm here with my partner, Mark.
Hi, Cynthia. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Montalban. I'm a co-founder at MindfulText. MindfulText simplifies habit development for peak performance and well-being by sending text message nudges and employing behavioral psychology techniques to assist busy professionals in cultivating lasting mindfulness practices. And so we're just going to spend a few minutes here, a couple minutes here, just mentioning how the Techquanimity podcast started. And Cynthia and I actually met at Wisdom 2.0, a conference dedicated to illuminating the ideas around mindfulness and wellness. And we both have great experiences in and around this topic, and we both wanted to start a podcast. And so we have come together to do just that. And Cynthia, do you want to mention a little bit about that as well?
Yes, I think that both of our companies involve technology, and then they're both involve mindfulness and compassion. And so I think it was a wonderful match. And we came up with the term Techquanimity. And so Techquanimity is a combination of equanimity, which is finding a state of balance and calm, and of course, technology. And so we're defining Techquanimity in one way as a state of calm and balance achieved by integrating technology with well-being practices.
All right. Thanks for that, Cynthia. And today we have a very special guest, someone who's not only been a cornerstone of the global startup ecosystem, but also a person I've had the honor of working closely with for over 6 adventurous years. He's responsible for shaping many global startup ecosystems. Please meet Adeo Ressi. He's the chairman of the Founder Institute and CEO of VC Lab. He's a serial entrepreneur, and he's on a mission to democratize the often opaque world of venture capital and incubate the next generation of global startups. Hi, Adeo.
Hi, Mark. Hi there. Thank you guys for having me. Thank you, Cynthia, as well. Great intro. I'm still going to have a little trouble pronouncing the podcast name, but don't take it personally. I'll do my best to get it right here as we go through the various discussion topics today.
Thanks, Adeo. And so first off, I just want to highlight some of the amazing social impact initiatives that you've been responsible for. Let's talk about Founder Institute's For Progress initiative. Can you mention how that started?
Yeah, I mean, so we had at that point when we created For Progress at the Founder Institute, we were operating in over 200 cities around the world, under 300. I don't remember the exact number, but it's like 225 to 250 range. And it's great to have launched companies in all sorts of places from Africa to Central Asia, et cetera. But a lot of the companies were needed, like we did one of the first e-commerce entities in Afghanistan, right? And the way they actually worked was they worked with local stores. And when you ordered something online, they would deliver the order to the local store, and the local store would deliver the merchandise. So if you wanted a dishwasher and the local store had the dishwasher, you could buy the dishwasher online, the money would get to the local store, and the local store would deliver the dishwasher. So stuff like that was definitely good for the world. But the issue is that, they weren't necessarily going to improve the plight of humanity on the planet, right? It would make things more convenient, let's say, for Afghanis, but it wasn't necessarily going to help climate change or reduce inequality or deal with any of the, UN Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, and there's 17 of them. So what we said is like, well, we should probably help companies launch that are working on these ground challenges faced by humanity. The UN did a pretty good job with the SDGs, though the UN admits that they're not going to hit the SDG goals by 2030, which was the intention, right? And these goals are like what I would consider the low water mark, right? They're not like, oh, let's shoot for the stars here. They're like, if we do this, we'll probably be able to survive on the planet for another 50 years without a massive rehaul of everything we need to do. So really, I don't consider that a benchmark of greatness. I consider that like, if we do this, we can survive for maybe 50 more years on the planet. Okay, good. You know, like, we want to do things where we can survive like forever on the planet, but it's a step in the right direction. So what we did is we turned all 17 of the goals, and there's 169 sub goals, and we turned each of those sub goals into metrics that the startups could actually work towards and achieve, because a lot of the goals were set for like nation states, but a nation state, as the UN said, is not going to hit these goals anyway. So we never thought that the UN could do it. We never thought that governments could do it. Frankly, companies have failed to do it. Nonprofits failed to do it. So we're like, well, startups could do it. So essentially, For Progress is translating the UN SDGs and the 169 sub goals into metrics that startups can hit, right? Measurably. So measurable metrics that startups can hit. And it's worked rather well. I think our implementation of it is a little flawed. So we've taken it over from the Founder Institute at VC Lab and Dessel Group, which is the company that I'm now CEO of. I'm chairman of Founder Institute and CEO. And we brought those For Progress metrics into venture capital and said, hey, if you want to be a venture firm working on making the world a better place, here are the goals that you should measure yourself against as a venture firm, and your portfolio companies should measure themselves against, and together we can move the needle forward. So For Progress, I would say, is still a work in progress, but an excellent initiative. If you're thinking to make the world a better place and you're looking on how to measure your impact, we've done the hard work for you to say, here are the KPIs, or we call them IKPIs, for impact key performance indicators, that you can focus on to move the needle in small and in big ways.
And I love the idea that you're starting like at the beginning of companies, right? Because then it's just like baked in to the culture.
Hopefully, right? In theory, they're supposed to report. So we have our own IKPIs at Dessel Group, and we've pulled them from the existing ones. But the idea is that we've taken 169 sub goals and we probably turned them into about 300 IKPIs. And then you can say, these are the IKPIs that we care about. Could be equality or whatever ones you think are best for you. And then ideally, you're supposed to track against them. So for us, we pulled some IKPIs and we do track against them. We're kind of public about all of our numbers, so we don't necessarily say like, this is the IKPI we're tracking. For example, we care about the amount of female participation in the industry, which is really terrible across venture. But for us, we're at the 20 to 40% range, depending on the cohort. Our aggregate's just about 30%. Now, that's 10x better than the industry. The industry hovers around 4%. So we're at, 30 to 40%, right? So we're already just way better than the industry, and we publish all those numbers, but we don't call it an IKPI, but that's one of our IKPIs.
Got it. And is this information available to any startup, or is it just through your organizations that
Oh,
you can?
it's out there publicly. There are tons of places. Just look up. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if you can put for progress in quotes and you'll find stuff. I'm going to test that right now on Google, but I'm going to guess you're going to find, yeah. Well, there's forprogress.org I'm looking for, but yeah, we're the third link down, the For Progress Company. And then we've got stuff on govclab.com about For Progress. So there's lots of ways you can find it. And it's all there publicly available for you to look at the SDGs, see how they've been translated into goals. We have them on the internet all over different places. Yeah. And something there to help people to do better things in the world than they might without those tools being available.
Love it.
Yes, it's such a great initiative to really inspire more entrepreneurs to think about more positive ways of aligning their businesses. And so you were CEO at Founder Institute, and now you're doing some work at VC Lab. One of the things I want to highlight about VC Lab is how you've created what's known as the Menserius Oath. And a lot of people have different opinions about venture capital. And I know that you have had your own gripes about it. And this is kind of how the Menserius Oath may have come about. Could you explain a little bit of how you are improving venture capital in the world?
Yeah. So venture capital is an unethical industry. It's, I'll give an example. The SEC just passed sweeping regulations, and honestly, they're mostly ethical regulations. They passed it about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. And these regulations are like, if you're going to offer someone a special deal, you got to tell other people about the special deal, kind of obvious things. You can't you can't just not have your fiduciary duties. And fiduciary duties are like the baseline ethics, like the low watermark in ethics. Similarly, like the SDGs are the low watermark of what humanity needs to achieve to survive on the planet.
Like, don't go to jail ethics.
Yeah, kind of like, exactly, like don't screw your partner, don't steal money from your LPs. It's like truly the low watermark of ethics. And the SEC passed a bunch of sweeping regulations, like you can't exculpate, you can't get out of your low watermark ethics. And the NVCA, the National Venture Capital Association of America, sued the SEC, saying hey, this is not right. This isn't fair, right? It's like they sued them because the SEC is trying to say, hey, everyone, act a little bit more ethically. And the trade association of venture capital firms was like, no, how dare you? I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, right? So the reality is that venture capital is unethical. The people who practice it have done many unethical things for many years. The vendors are unethical. The whole system is unethical. And as a result, the technology that emerges, if the practitioners that provide the funding are unethical, then the things that they fund are kind of obviously going to be unethical too. So what we said is
Eventually, right?
well, let's start with the basics, like Meta, unethical, Amazon, unethical. Like the list of stuff that's been funded by venture is a litany of things that have not helped humanity, or that are in and of themselves unethical, et cetera, right? They're stealing our data. They're treating us, they're trying to manipulate us. They're trying to influence us in ways that are inappropriate, et cetera, all to make money at our expense, not to help us at all. You can make money and help people, or you can make money and hurt people. And the vast amount of stuff that venture capital funding is stuff that makes money and hurts people at the same time. And it's because the industry itself does not have ethics to care. It's like, oh, this is going to make me a lot of money, I'm going to fund it. Like, okay, well, have you thought about what might happen if, like, play the game through here? Like, this is not really a company that's good for humanity in any way. So what we said is, look, we're just going to, like, this system's broken, right? Because the ethics are broken. And so we're going to rebuild venture capital. But in order to do so, we're going to rebuild it on a foundation of strong ethics. So we took the Hippocratic Oath and we said, hey, doctors are far from perfect, right? I'm not saying doctors are perfect, but the Hippocratic Oath, for the most part, has been a good thing. And it's led to the creation of an industry that, for the most part, has the best interest of the patient in mind, for the most part, right? I'm not saying healthcare is perfect, but for the most part. And so what could we do here as an ethical foundation for a new venture capital industry that would have the same effect on that industry that the Hippocratic Oath has had on the healthcare industry? And so we created the Mensarius Oath, copying concepts from the Hippocratic Oath, but adding obvious concepts that should be in financing, like looking, because doctors, they really care about your well-being, right? But they don't really care about other people's well-being, right? For us, with financiers, you really need to think more holistically about not only doing good for yourself, doing good for the people you're helping to finance, but doing good for everyone else that's involved in whatever is created through that financing as well. So we took a broader view on what doing good would be like. And so we created the Mensarius Oath, and it's the foundation for everything that we do. We do not work with anyone that does not explicitly agree to the Mensarius Oath. So if we train you to go into venture capital as a worker, you need to sign the Mensarius Oath. If we help you to launch a fund with us, then you have to publicly agree to the Mensarius Oath. And, part of what the Mensarius Oath says is if you violate the concepts within it and you don't remedy it, you have to leave the industry, right? And we enforce it. And actually the community enforces it more than we enforce it. But if someone says to us, hey, I think someone's violating the Mensarius Oath, we'll talk with them. And if they are, they're out of the network. They're out of any program that we run. They're out of the network. And it's like, look, we don't have time for this. Life is too short.
Well, like, losing that social capital is the kiss of death, right? Like,
maybe not. But that we're not here to be the kiss of death. We have to have boundaries, right? We don't want to, like, if you don't want to have the ethics, we don't want to work with you, right? You are the sum of the 5 closest people to you. And if you're surrounded by a bunch of unethical people, then no matter how ethical you are, right, you're going to do unethical things because your, let's say, lawyer did something unethical, or your accountant did something unethical, or your business partner did something unethical, right? So for us, like, we've just created an ethical ring fence. And either you're in the ethics or you're out. And right. And our world, we don't worry about screwing people. We don't worry about having someone do something unfair to us, or have sharp elbows, or be an ass, or anything else that is common in the industry today. Because we have the Mensarius Oath. And if someone does that, then they leave the community. So we've created a safe space for venture capital in the world today.
I love that you're working on that.
If that is a sentence I never thought I'd hear.
Well, it's happened. And we've created roughly, we created half of all new firms in 2022, and roughly 10% of all operating firms worldwide. Okay. A little under half, a little under 10%. Okay. So, And if we keep going, right, and we're growing a lot, because a lot of people realize that this is a serious problem, right, then we might get to the point where we're a significant double digit of all venture capital firms worldwide. The next issue is that they have to perform better than their counterparts, right? Because if the ethical firms do worse than the non-ethical firms, that's going to be not a great outcome, right? So our view is that we're providing people with such a competitive edge that they're going to perform 2 to 5 times better than their unethical peers. And then, it's like game over. So you can, play the unethical game, or you can, do it the ethical and responsible way. And you'll actually not only get better outcomes for society, but you'll get better outcomes financially and in every other way. And so we're just going to change the game, right? The game needs to be changed, and we're going to change it.
Can you talk a little bit about who in the audience would be a good fit for VC Lab?
Yeah, well, look, so on the I'll go Founder Institute now and talk about VC Lab. So on the Founder Institute side, anyone that's thinking of starting a company, and I encourage anyone here that wants to start something that is going to make the world a better place, now is the best time to do it, because we're lining up the capital to back you, right? There's more capital available for people working on things that matter than ever before. So if you are inspired to do something to make the world a better place, then you should do that right now, because it's one of the best times in history to do so. And then in terms of being on the venture side, so there are 2 things that we do. We have something called the Venture Institute, which trains people to enter the venture capital industry. So you can be like in venture capitalists, you have everything from an intern to a partner, right? And if you don't have a lot of experience in venture capital, you start at the lowest ranks, and over every few years, like 3 to 5 years, you can move up a rank. But it can take you, therefore, 15 to 20 years to get to the point where you're a partner, because you're moving, 3-5 years at a time. You may start as an intern, associate, analyst, principal, partner, right? So, that's 4 or 5 steps, depending on where you start, 3 to 5 years each. That adds up. And a lot of times you have to jump firms to make the leap to the next level, because they'll keep you at an associate. So you have to leave your firm, go somewhere else to be an analyst, leave that firm, go somewhere again to be a principal, and then leave that firm to be a partner, et cetera, right? So the training program will basically give you cut years and years and years off that learning path and get you placed in a role at a VC firm that also has the Mensa RSL thing, so it gives you a career shortcut. If you're further along in your career and you've had some success as an entrepreneur or run an accelerator or anything like that, you can join VC Lab itself. That is an accelerator for venture capital firms. And as I mentioned, we accelerated about half, depending on what number you look at, it's somewhere between 44 and 60%. But I'm going to say just under 50% of all new venture capital firms in 2022. This year will be bigger by quite a bit. So we'll look at what people say the total number of firms created are, but I wouldn't be surprised if we accelerated 60% of all firms this year, in that range.
Wow.
So going back, that's a 4-month program, and you come in with an idea for a firm. Let's say you're in Central Asia or wherever, and you're like, I want to launch a firm to do whatever type of investing, let's say AI investing, deep tech, whatever you're interested in. And over, 4 to 6 months, we'll help you get everything set up and close on capital and start investing. So the average time right now is just under 6 months. So about 5.7 months for someone in the program from start until they have money in the bank that they're investing.
That's very interesting. You're always up to super fascinating stuff, Dave. And yeah, I do. This is very in alignment with the Techquanimity podcast, especially with your focus on the Manserius Oath, right? Because the foundation of technology has not been as focused on since you have been working on this. For example, now that we have ideas like the Manserius Oath in place, we can rest more easy that more ethical funding and ethical businesses are going to come about. And that is part of how I think the world will reach what we're calling Techquanimity, for example. So I want to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about entrepreneur wellness. And, you know, being an entrepreneur is one of the most stressful jobs in the world. And I just want to talk a little bit about your own personal journey in wellness and talk to you a little bit about that. So can you share a little bit about how you practice wellness and what you think about managing wellness amidst your career in technology?
Yeah. So, well, so maybe it's worth starting with the company side and then going to the personal side. So first and foremost, you know, we are at least at well, both Founder Institute and Decile Group, which is a parent company of VC Lab, are virtual first organizations. And I'm not running Founder Institute day to day, so I don't want to speak too much about it. My co-founder is running it. He's great. But I can talk a lot about what we're doing at Decile Group and VC Lab. So the first thing is that we, you know, I'm not going to say that we don't work hard, because there's definitely a lot of stuff that we need to do. There's a lot of stuff that we do. And sometimes it requires a lot of hard work. But what we try to do is ensure that very consciously that everyone in the organization isn't completely overloaded, right? Because that definitely can happen in organizations, especially virtual organizations. If you don't see someone physically every day, you don't know if they're working 5 hours or 15 hours a day. It's hard to gauge if you only spend like a few hours with them a week on Zoom, or even less than that, depending, right? Some people may only be like a half an hour on Zoom a week with them, and you just don't know. Are they? But so we're very mindful, and we check in with each other. And when someone's like overworked or really stressed out, we'll try and help them to find a way to lower their workload or offset their workload to other people. And again, it's, you know, we're in a fast growth startup, so that happens pretty regularly. But one of the things that we're very conscious about is avoiding burnout, right? Because our goal is to hire some of the best people in the world, because we're training people that don't know what they're doing. So if we don't have people that really, really, really know what they're doing, then the people we're training are going to be even more lost. So we're looking for like very high quality, very specialized people that know what they're doing, like top of the field. And then we want to create an environment for them where they not only really like what they're doing and enjoy the work, but they're not getting burned out. And that can be tricky. Now, candidly, it's a constant journey to get there, right? Because like we'll get a lot of new customers, let's say, a lot of new people working with us. And so, okay, that ramps up the work a bit. But then we're like, okay, so-and-so is getting really overloaded here, so we should look to automate a lot of stuff they're doing, and maybe and or hire, right? But automating and hiring is not something like, let's hire, let's automate. And it's not like tomorrow it's done. That might take a month, or it might take a few weeks. So we're always in that cat and mouse game of like trying to we're growing, so then things get busy. Then we see, oh, so-and-so is getting overloaded. What can we do to help them? So I'll give an example. Right now, we have a lot of people that want to work with us on a variety of our different offerings. That's overloading one of our groups. We call them fund ops. So we're working with the fund ops team to figure out ways to sort of shift burdens off of them. So we'll be hiring a number of people very soon to help them, right, with some of the nitty gritty work. And we're also in some automation tasks to also help them. Now that's going to take a couple months to be fully rolled out, and they'll be busy for a couple months. Maybe busier than we would like, or even they would like. But, we're very always conscious of that. So that's how we think about things. We want to create a healthy environment for people to work in, where we can grow really fast and yet not have people burn out working, 18-hour days and weekends and stuff like that. So we were very thoughtful about that. In terms of personally, look, I mean, the entrepreneurship is very challenging. There's always a lot of stuff that's coming at you, always problems, even if things are going, there's good problems and bad problems, but there are always problems, right? So either you have a lot of good problems or you have a lot of bad problems. And we're fortunate in that I'm in a situation where we have a lot of good problems. But we still have good problems. Like I just brought up, like one of our groups is kind of overtaxed right now, right? So we have to figure out how to make them happy, bring their workload down, So that's an example of a good problem. Obviously, if they were not busy, that would be a bad problem, right? We might need to let someone go or something like that, which is a terrible thing to have to do as an entrepreneur, right? So you're always dealing with problems. So for me, I try not to, it is what it is, right? I just, okay, we have to deal with this thing. Let's just deal with it, right? Let's not get angry. We don't need to get emotional. We don't have to get frustrated. We'll just come up with a solution. And so one of the things, like the first and foremost is, I'm not going to say this always happens, but for the most part, I try to keep incredibly even keel about anything that happens, right? Because if you react, if you overreact, that's not great. If you underreact, that's also not great. So that's always a problem, because you can make a mountain out of a molehill, or treat a mountain like a molehill. Those are two very bad things as an entrepreneur. So you just want to try and stay as even keel and balanced as possible, facing any sort of obstacle, large or small, right? So that's number one. And then number two, I'll try always to get people's viewpoints, but at the end of the day, someone needs to make difficult decisions. Right. And so usually that person, unfortunately, is me, so for better or for worse, a lot of times I have to make the final decision on a lot of things, from legal terms to hiring and firing, all these kind of things. But, my process there is stay incredibly balanced. Try and get as many people's opinions that's relevant to the decision as possible. And then, render the final decision either as a group or, if needed, just as me to move on, right? Because the other thing that's super important in all this is speed, right? So you can, as an entrepreneur, your job is to make the most possible decisions in the shortest period of time. Right? Because you're iterating on different things. You're trying to figure out if this works, if this direction works, if this, marketing message works, if this, new product line works. And it's not, you're not going to get every decision right. But I'll tell you this, you'll get more decisions right if you're making a lot of fast decisions than if you're taking decisions too slowly. So we try to make decisions very, very quickly. right? Again, with the feedback from the group, so that we can just get more shots on goal, more right decisions behind us, and move forward and do that in a very balanced and sort of non-stressed out way. And so, in order to keep that sort of balanced mindset, I do a lot of things. So I kind of live like a hermit. I don't really I do go out, right? I don't want to make it seem like I don't go out, but these days I don't go out very much, right? Like I'll go out maybe once or twice a week, right? And I live in a beautiful place. Like I can show you, I have rolling hills, and I kind of stay really balanced, and I don't let because when you get out in the world and people are honking at you and cutting you off on the highway and yelling angry at you because you ordered something on a menu or whatever, that all just affects your mentality, and then you carry these little shards of negativity that come from the world with you, and I just don't need that. I don't need any. So I live in a happy place. I stay very balanced. I go out in nature every day. I try and do things like walks and exercise, and that's all part of my my mindfulness practices to not let the shards of negativity, the problems that happen in the company really change my inner balance and alignment, so that I can make these rapid fire decisions relatively from a place of strength, rather than kind of because once you start getting off and you're frustrated and angry and whatever other things that come up, then your decision making reflects that mental state, right? So if I'm frustrated and I have to make a decision, I don't think that decision's going to be very good, right? So for me, just staying at that even keel level, fairly balanced, is mission critical.
I'm curious if you use any technology tools yourself to stay balanced.
I don't really need anything, I'm pretty, I can't say I was always even keel, but I'll if the kinds of technology that I use are not the kind of technology that you're referring to. So I have a bow and arrow, and if I'm a little bit out of alignment, I'll just take the bow and arrow, see how I'm doing. If I'm actually in alignment, I'll split arrows. So I use whatever the composite arrows. So technically they just hit each other and they make weird noises, but you definitely know when you hit another arrow, it's like ring. You're like, whoa, okay, splitting arrows. They don't actually split, though. I guess maybe technically you could, but they're definitely hitting one another. So that's an example of technology that I use. So if I'm feeling a little, I'll go out there and shoot, and I'll see, and I'll use that as a way to bring myself back in alignment until I start splitting arrows, and I'll stop. I'll occasionally draw Osho cards, which I find are great. If you don't know, there's a Osho card game. He's a fascinating character in the world. He's gone now. But there's a Zen card game. And interestingly enough, I was reading the book last night where I drew a card flowering. I was in kind of a sour mood yesterday. I'm not exactly sure why. Lots of potential reasons. And case in point, I was like, man, I should not be working right now. I'm not in the best mood. So I actually didn't work. What did I do last night? I ended up just Not much. I did a little work, but I was more just kind of doing some chores around the house and stuff because I wasn't in a great mood. And as I said, if you're not in that right mindset, that's not a time that you should be working. But I did draw an Osho card. And interestingly enough, I drew this card flowering, which is a kind of really positive card. And I'm like, well, that's weird. I'm super not positive right now. So that's good that I drew this card because it sort of brought me into a more positive space. And then I started flipping through the book, and there's a bunch of negative cards, which I've actually never drawn. But you know, it was interesting that I drew yet again another positive card, and it gave me a time to reflect on all the positive things that were happening in my life, and interestingly enough, helped bring me into a better state of mind. But I was like, as I flipped through the book, reading some of them, I'm like, wow, there's a lot more negative things. Maybe these would have been more appropriate for my mindset at the moment, but whatever, it helped me get to a good place. So
I like
so
that.
those are the kind of tools that I use. I'm not
Yeah.
using like apps or anything like that right now.
I love that you got what you needed.
Well, I don't know if I would say I got what I needed. It definitely was an interesting card because it talks about your flowering in the world and bringing all this positive light to things. And in fact, in many ways, I am. Just I happened not to be at that moment last night when I drew the card.
So you have a really amazing view on up and coming, companies, tech companies, and I'm curious, what do you see happening in trends where people are actually using technology to help improve well-being, to help improve mindfulness, some of those things?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a journey, not a destination, and there's no right way to go from A to B, and there are lots of ways to, and lots of things that are needed. So people should use whatever resonates with them. As I said, like archery kind of works for me, but there are lots of things. I also do take walks every day. So actually, that's actually something I did yesterday. I was kind of in this sour mood, so I took a walk in nature. I then picked up my kids and took them to dinner. So like, it doesn't necessarily have to be tools and technology, but tools and technology are definitely one of the things that are in your arsenal of different activities. So, you know, obviously exercise, right? That's super important. There's mindfulness practices that could be a combination of exercise. So like archery is one for me, yoga is a very common one, et cetera, et cetera. I do both. And then obviously tools, as you guys were talking about. So like, I think if the world around us is in trouble, it's not that the world around us is in trouble, it's that we're in trouble because we're creating the world around us, right? So if like there's issues with the environment or issues in your household or issues in whatever, it's not because the environment's in trouble, it's not because your household's in trouble, it's because you are in trouble and we are in trouble, right? So the everything manifests. So the problems we're facing in the world are a direct manifestation of the problems we're facing within ourselves, right? And so like any tools that you can use to help solve the problems within you will start to solve the problems in the outer world. So like I've solved a lot of stuff within me. I've created boundaries in the organization that I run. And as a result, I just don't have common problems that most of humanity deal with, especially in venture. I don't have people trying to screw me over. I don't have, none of the things that are sort of classic problems that you deal with in a venture context. And I'm running a massive venture organization. I don't have any of those problems because I've done a lot of work on myself and I've created boundaries in the organization. And so none of the classic things manifest, right? But and that's true for everybody. So everybody has and experiences a lot of things that they probably shouldn't experience, that they don't need to experience, right? But the first place to, like, drama with boyfriends and girlfriends, drama with, parents and loved ones, drama with all this stuff. And a lot of that's just manifesting from their internal issues that remain unresolved. And so,
I love what you said here about using any tool you can to essentially get yourself right on the inside, because then that will manifest on the outside.
right. So you have to find, like, every, and look, I'm not perfect. There's lots of work that, I'm very unhappy with the amount of plastic consumption that I do. As an example, it's very difficult to break. So I actually shop for most of my stuff at the farmer's market, and the freaking farmer's market now puts a lot of stuff in plastic. I'm like, really? And they've been adding plastic. So I used to buy stuff that didn't come in plastic, and now it comes in plastic. And I'm like, guys, I really want to continue shopping here because I like your produce, or I like whatever you have, but you're putting it in plastic. Can you please not put it in plastic? So there's some progress being made there, but honestly, like, that's a huge area of improvement. Now, that's not necessarily something that's coming from within me. And of course, I could just, like, be like, okay, well, you're now putting stuff in plastic, so I'm not buying any more of your stuff ever again, right? Which is a little harsh. But yeah, so there's always it's a journey, not a destination, right? And as you move and unpack layers of the onion, that is the different sort of things that have brought us off path and brought you off path personally, and you start clearing those things, then there you find out there are more things, right, that need to be cleared. And some of them are within you, right? And some of them are not within you, right? Like the plastic example at the farmer's market, that's not within you. But that doesn't mean you can't influence the outcome either. So, one of the vendors that serves stuff in plastic, is starting to bring stuff in glass because we asked him to. And while glass is imperfect as well, we actually reuse all the glass stuff we get from him as everything: sauce jars, glasses to drink water from, and they're much more recyclable. So, you can change the stuff within you, and you can actually change the stuff within the world to come in more alignment. And that, as I said, is not a destination, because as you change more and more things, you will find more things to change. It's a journey, but I recommend that everyone start on that journey and use whatever tools and techniques that works for you.
So to shift gears just a little bit, you kind of have an inside look at up and coming tech companies. And I'm curious I'm really interested in this space at the intersection of, like, well-being and technology is created to create more well-being. What do you see happening in the space?
And just to add to that, you could also mention a little bit about the funds that are coming about, focusing on that. It doesn't have to be technology. Maybe there's interesting flows of capital as well.
Well, I mean, it's still early days, but things are moving in the right, because trans tech was a term used for this. And you guys mentioned you met at the Wisdom 2.0 conference, so that's obviously been growing and an important event in that world. So I would say it started really as very niche, maybe five 5 years ago and has been moving more and more mainstream since then. And, but it's very difficult to pinpoint one thing, because you have like precision neuroscience and things like that, which are definitely in many cases doing what you're talking about in this podcast, which is looking at ways to find more balance and to use technology to help people overcome certain mental issues that they're dealing with, right? But really from a medical angle, then there are people working on it from a social angle, then there are people working on it. So we're seeing, all those things happening right now, both on the entrepreneurial side. So entrepreneurs creating, everything from the precision neuroscience things to the reminder apps, etc. And then we're seeing funds being launched with a similar set of diversity, looking at, again, funding precision science, funding, one of the interesting funds I know of, and I can't go too much into detail because when funds are fundraising, they're prevented from sharing their thesis publicly because of what's called general solicitation laws. But I can talk about it without naming the name. But there's a fund, for example, that's working on what he calls laziness. And it's not, being lazy, but, there are lots of things that people do that are really kind of foolishly difficult, right? And they could, in fact, do the same thing in a much easier and way, right? So this particular fund is looking at finding businesses that allow people to do the same thing that they may be doing now in a very difficult way, to do it in a much easier way. And right, and that's important, right? Because like a lot of times, one of the ways that the problems that we have internally manifest externally is through hardship. Right. So instead of starting a company and it being easy, because we have a lot of mental hangups and limiting beliefs and self-doubt and all this stuff, we end up manifesting a more difficult journey for ourselves. Now, we can then make the end journey a little bit easier, but we're always going to make that journey harder, because that's we're bringing our own problem to the table. So even if we took something that's hard right now and made it easier, but you still think of it as hard, you may still do the easier thing and say, well, that was really hard, when in fact it's not hard anymore. Right. And so a lot of and this is a difficult area. So again, going back to what people are working on to fix it, I see people, as I mentioned, precision neuroscience, but there's also like the legalization of all sorts of substances. I know, I'm not a fan of ketamine at all, but there's a lot of uses of ketamine to break these habits, like PTSD or whatever. Ketamine's been very effective in helping treat those conditions. And so I know a number of people working on various drugs to work on these things. Obviously, there's the apps and other things. So again, there's a really wide range of initiatives to try and help people with these issues. But at the end of the day, you have to want to change, right? And then and that's the genesis. Once somebody is on a journey of self-growth and self-realization and wanting to change, then there really is today a lot of tools available, or are a lot of tools available for people to change with. But the genesis moment is that desire to change. And what I would say there, you're making your own reality most of the time. Okay. So, I can just go through like how you perceive something is often how it is. And it's an unfortunate, inescapable thing that it's like, oh, this is terrible, it's going to be terrible, or this is good, it's going to be good. And it really starts with your mindset. So that when you're willing to change your mindset, everything around you can change and will change. But it really does start with your mindset. Now, I just had an incoming call there because I've got something else to jump off to very quickly. But if there's something, that last point that we can make, I'd love to.
Well, I think that you did a great job of really talking about both the plight of the entrepreneur that's creating a company, a Techquanimity company, and also just the major opportunity of how bringing something forth from the inside. Thank you for that. And I think that that's a great definition of Techquanimity, which is our last question for everyone, which is how do you reach Techquanimity?
Well, I would just say that if you start with the desire to change, right, your view, and bring it more in alignment with the reality that you want, right? Because if you're constantly upset about things, or constantly frustrated with things, or constantly angry with the outcomes of things, that's actually what you want. You want to be frustrated, you want to be angry, but maybe there's another way, right?
Mm.
The second you make that decision that there is another way and that you can change, then you can start manifesting a different outcome, manifesting a different reality, and then you can use the tools that are out there and available. I'm getting nagged to go this other thing.
Thank you, Adeo.
On that journey.
Very inspiring, Adeo. Thank you so much for being with us. Bye.
Talk to you guys later. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All
That
right.
was inspiring.
Yes. What did you like the most about that discussion?
It's interesting about how he uses archery, not only as a way to kind of center himself with mindfulness, but actually as a tool to figure out kind of where he is.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I use solitaire. I know that may sound weird, but when I play solitaire, I can gauge kind of where I am in my mind and how well like my cognitive processes are doing for the day. And I use it in somewhat of a similar fashion also to calm myself down. So it was fascinating to hear him say that.
I also thought it was interesting that he uses cards as well, and that's something that you are developing too. So, I think that's a great sign that a great CEO like Adeo is using something physical like cards. I think that's a great segue into maybe you can talk a little bit about that, or if maybe
Yeah.
that's not out yet, or yeah, can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, that would be great. So my company is InnerAlly, and the focus of it is to help people practice self-compassion, but it's very narrow because I'm interested in how you speak to yourself. And so a lot of times people think, well, oh, like it and that's easy. I can just change how I speak to myself. But it turns out we have all these hangups about how we speak to ourselves. And I think I could reach back here and grab some of my cards to even show you that I use the cards and the characters to help people create internal language. And so there's all these really fun characters that have different real emotional needs that all humans have, and it can help you really focus and be targeted in how you support yourself, and that's great for entrepreneurship too.
And it's based on research you're doing with Stanford, right?
Yes, I'm honing the process in the Applied Compassion Training Program, and that's at the Stanford Center for Compassion, Altruism, Research, and Education, which incidentally, Dr. Doty is the chair of, and he is going to be one of our upcoming guests.
Very excited about that. And one thing that I really liked about what Adeo was mentioning really was just bringing it back to checking with your alignment in order to then make decisions from that place of alignment, which is what you were alluding to as well. And that reminder to, as you continually get to that place of alignment, the next step, at least as an entrepreneur and people in high performing roles, is to be able to make as many decisions as possible while in that state of alignment. That was a great reminder for myself, which, being as part of a small team, it's not the easiest thing to do, but I really appreciated that reminder from Adeo.
Well, and I love the type of work that you're doing with MindfulText because, that's a tangible reminder to bring yourself back to center.
Yes, thank you. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that and what we're up to. And you got anything planned for the rest of the week?
Well, I am working on a brand new class that's going to be launching in November, and I'm calling it Release the Habit. So if you had one of these unhelpful habits sneak up on you, maybe in the pandemic, and you're ready to let it go, like Adeo said, to take that first step to change it, then you can hit me up at cynthia@InnerAlly.com and I can tell you all about it, or you can hit my website at InnerAlly.com.
We
And
made some
what about you,
banners
Mark?
here. So boom, there's a banner for InnerAlly.com.
Nice
And
job.
myself, yes, folks can reach out to me if you're interested in leveraging the text message channel as part of supporting or releasing mindfulness programs. Reach out to me. And thank you all for joining today. It's been a pleasure to have Adeo. Definitely check out Adeo's work. Follow him on LinkedIn, Twitter, everywhere. Definitely a very interesting individual, and apply to VC Lab if that's something you're interested in doing in your career. I know that there are a few people out there in the world today that are looking for a career shift. So it could be definitely a good shift for folks.
What a great ecosystem to work in. And we'll post in the show notes a link to the Menserieth Oath and all the rest of the things that you need.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.